welcome to Crime Clueless. We're your hosts. I'm Jenna.
And I'm Lara.
I'm Krista.
And I'm Kayla.
We have Kayla virtual today. She's still sick. Feels so bad for her, but she was willing to call in and listen to the story. You'll hear her.
Excited to be here.
Virtually.
Yes.
Sounds
need-
funny.
We need Kayla to provide all the great questions and insights. So we had to bring her on virtually.
Yes.
Thanks, guys.
We have an unsolved case for you today, and
Not again.
it's almost as baffling as Brian Schaefer's case. And it's one that's also been on my Google alerts for years. Just hoping that they would find something, anything, but so far, nothing.
Oh, no.
I know. But, like we say, someone somewhere knows something. Yep.
Got to get these out there.
Yes.
Let's get going.
Perfect. It was almost 2:00 in the Swanson household. Annette and Brian Swanson were already in bed, winding down after a long day. The familiar buzz of Brandon's name on the screen brought no concern. He often checked in with his parents, even late at night. But tonight, his voice carried an unusual edge. "Hey, Mom. Hey, Dad," Brandon began, his tone calm but tinged with frustration. "I need your help. I drove into a ditch. My car's stuck." Annette sat up, switching on the bedside lamp as Brian reached for his glasses. "Are you okay? Where are you?" she asked, her voice concerned. "I'm fine," Brandon assured her. "I'm near Lind, just off the highway. Can you come get me?" Lind was only a short drive from their home in Marshall. Relieved he wasn't hurt, they quickly threw on clothes, grabbed their keys, and headed out the door. On the way, they called Brandon again to confirm his location. He described his surroundings to them: gravel roads, open fields, and faint lights in the distance that he believed were from Lind. It sounded straightforward enough, but when they arrived where he said he was, there was no sign of Brandon or his car. They called him back. "Brandon, we're here, but we don't see you," Brian said, scanning the dark, empty roads. "What do you mean, I'm here?" Brandon replied, his tone laced with irritation. "I can see the lights of Lind. I'm walking towards them now." "Are you sure you're near Lind?" Annette asked, trying to stay calm. "Yes, Mom, I'm sure," Brandon replied. "I can see the lights." Confusion set in as they drove back and forth searching for him. Their headlights cut into the darkness, but the vast emptiness of the rural Minnesota landscape offered no clues. As the minutes turned into an hour, Brandon's voice on the other end of the line grew more impatient. "I don't get it. How can you not see me? I'm literally walking towards the lights." The frustration was mutual. The descriptions Brandon gave didn't align with the terrain they were navigating. It was as if he was in a completely different place. Suddenly, the tone of the call shifted. Brandon's voice, so familiar, took on an edge of alarm. "Oh, shit!" The line went dead. "Brandon! Brandon!" Annette shouted into the phone. No response. Brian pulled the car over as Annette redialed. Nothing. The phone rang and rang, but went unanswered. Panic set in as they frantically drove the back roads, shouting his name into the still night. Brandon Swanson, their son, had vanished.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
That is terrifying.
And he knows this landscape. He grew up here. He's familiar with it. He should have, been able to know where he was. And they knew right where to come and get him from where he described, but
He wasn't there.
That's crazy.
Brandon Swanson was the kind of young man anyone would be proud to know. Born on January 30th, 1989, in Marshall, Minnesota, Brandon grew up in a close-knit, loving family. His parents, Brian and Annette Swanson, raised him and his younger sister in a warm and supportive home, instilling values of kindness, curiosity, and determination. From a young age, Brandon had an insatiable curiosity about the world. He loved to tinker with things, often taking apart gadgets around the house to figure out how they worked, much to his parents' amusement and occasional frustration. The curiosity translated into his choice to study wind turbine technology at Minnesota West Community and Technical College. Renewable energy fascinated Brandon, and he saw it as a career path that can make a real difference in the world. Brandon's interests didn't stop at science and technology. He had a wide range of hobbies that reflected his outgoing and well-rounded personality. He loved music, he had a knack for playing guitar, often strumming along to his favorite rock and country songs. On quiet evenings, you might find him sitting on the back porch, playing softly and humming along. Music for Brandon was more than just a pastime, it was a way to unwind and connect with those around him. He was also an avid reader with a preference for science fiction and adventure novels. He enjoyed immersing himself in imaginative worlds, often talking animatedly with friends about the books he was reading or the shows he was watching. His curiosity extended to history and geography as well. Brandon had a surprisingly good memory for obscure facts, and his friends joked that he could be a one-man trivia team. Another passion of Brandon's was exploring the outdoors. Growing up in rural Minnesota, he developed a love for nature early on. Weekends often meant hiking, fishing, or simply driving through the countryside, taking in the beauty of the landscape. He enjoyed stargazing on clear nights, marveling at the constellations scattered across the open sky. His appreciation for the outdoors influenced his career aspirations, tying into his desire to work with renewable energy. Brandon also had a creative side. He liked drawing and photography, often capturing the beauty of the rural Midwest through his camera lens. His parents proudly displayed his photos around the house, snapshots of sunsets over cornfields, the frozen stillness of a Minnesota winter, and candid shots of family and friends that perfectly captured the moment. Socially, Brandon was outgoing and easy to get along with. He was the type of friend who would show up when you needed him, ready with a joke or a helping hand. His friends described him as thoughtful, someone who really listened and made others feel seen and heard. Whether it was a late night heart to heart or a lively debate about which band was better, Brandon was all in. At home, Brandon was the heart of the family. He had a close bond with his younger sister, teasing her like any older brother, but always looking out for her. Family dinners were full of laughter, with Brandon often at the center of it, telling stories or recounting something funny that had happened during his day. He valued his parents' guidance and was the kind of son who called just to check in or to share something exciting about his life. Brian and Annette took pride in their son's kindness, work ethic, and ability to connect with people. They often said that Brandon was the type of person who would go far in life, not because he was flashy or overly ambitious, but because he genuinely cared about making a difference. It was this close relationship and his reliable nature that made the events of May 14th, 2008, all the more surreal and heartbreaking. That night, Brandon called home for help as he had done so many times before. But this time, their lives would take a turn into a mystery that remains unsolved to this day, leaving a hole in their family and a question that still echoes. What happened to Brandon Swanson? The week leading up to May 14th had been a whirlwind for Brandon. With his first year of college behind him, he was preparing for the next chapter of his life. Brandon had been studying wind turbine technology at Minnesota West Community and Technical College, a program he genuinely enjoyed. He often talked about how renewable energy was the future and how he wanted to play a role in shaping it. That summer, Brandon was looking forward to a break before returning to school in the fall. His friends were scattered across small towns in Minnesota, and with summer fast approaching, they were making plans to spend time together before their paths diverged. Some of his friends were staying in their hometowns to work, while others, like Brandon, had plans to leave Marshall for new opportunities. The final days of the semester were bittersweet for Brandon. He was thrilled to have completed his classes, but aware that some of the routines he had grown used to, like late-night study sessions, casual hangouts, impromptu road trips, were coming to an end, at least for now. He had a knack for bringing people together, and it was no surprise that his social calendar was packed as everyone tried to squeeze in one last memory before the summer began. On May 13th, Brandon spent the day tying up loose ends at school. He said goodbye to his professors, exchanged contact information with classmates, and packed up the last of his belongings from his dorm. His car, a green Chevy Lumina, was filled with books, clothes, and the little trinkets that made his dorm room feel like home. That evening, Brandon decided to celebrate with friends in Canby, a small town about 30 miles from Marshall. The gathering was low-key, a chance for everyone to unwind and enjoy each other's company after the stress of finals. Brandon was in high spirits, laughing and joking as he made his rounds, catching up with people he hadn't seen in weeks. As Brandon made his way into the small gathering that evening, it felt like a farewell tour of sorts. The party wasn't wild or extravagant. It was just a group of friends sharing laughter, stories, and a sense of camaraderie that felt bittersweet. Brandon greeted everyone with his usual warmth, his easy smile lighting up the room. "Brandon," one friend called out, walking in, raising a drink. "You made it." "Of course," Brandon replied with a grin. "Wouldn't miss it." For the first hour, the atmosphere was lively. Conversations bounced between reminiscing about the school year and discussing plans for the summer. Brandon, ever the conversationalist, was the center of it all. One of his closest friends, Matt, pulled him aside at one point. "So, this wind turbine thing, how serious are you about it?" he asked, genuinely curious. "Pretty serious," Brandon had responded, leaning against the kitchen counter. "It's not just a job. It's like something that matters, you know? Helping the planet, doing something with purpose." Matt recalled, nodding, impressed but not surprised. Brandon had always been the kind of guy who thought beyond himself. Throughout the night, Brandon made sure to spend time with everybody. He shared inside jokes with Sarah, a friend from high school who had known him longer than anyone else at the party. A friend named Jason recalled talking about music, debating merits of their favorite bands. Another friend, Emily, he sat quietly with for a few minutes, looking up at the stars through the window and talking about how strange it felt to leave behind the life he'd known. Emily recalled him saying, "Change is good, but it's hard too." Emily had responded, "Yeah, it's like you're excited, but you're scared, you know?" "Exactly," Brandon said, flashing her a reassuring smile. As the hours passed, the party began to wind down. People started saying their goodbyes, some with tears, others with laughter. Brandon lingered, reluctant to let the night end too quickly. He was one of the last to leave, walking out to his car with a few friends who were also heading home. Sarah recalled telling him, "Hey, don't forget us when you're out saving the world." "Not a chance," Brandon had replied. "I'll be back before you know it, and when I am, you better have some good stories for me." As he climbed into his car, he rolled down the window and called out to the group one last time. "Take care of yourselves, all right? And text me when you get home so I know you made it." "Same to you, Swanson," someone shouted back. "I'll miss this," one of his friends had said as they clinked glasses, and Brandon had responded, "It's not goodbye, we'll see each other soon." For his friends, it was an ordinary goodbye, the kind that's filled with promise and seeing each other again. None of them could have imagined it would be the last time they'd see Brandon. The weight of that realization would haunt them for years to come as they replayed those final moments, those final conversations, and wondered if there was anything they could have done differently. As the night wore on, Brandon kept an eye on the time. He wasn't the type to stay out too late, especially with a sort of longer drive ahead of him. Just before midnight, he said his goodbyes, hugged his friends, and promised to keep in touch.
Had they been drinking at the party then, did you say?
Yes, it's reported that he had had a couple drinks, but they didn't think that he was anywhere near intoxicated when he was leaving.
Okay.
The drive from Canby to Marshall was one Brandon had made many times before. It was a quiet, rural route flanked by fields and occasional farmhouses. The dark skies were dotted with stars, and the hum of his car was the only sound on the empty road.
And he was driving by himself?
Yes.
Okay.
On this particular drive, something went wrong, whether it was a wrong turn, an unfamiliar detour, or simply bad luck. Brandon found himself off course. His car ended up stuck in a ditch, and as much as he tried, he couldn't get it out. Brandon wasn't panicked. He was resourceful, and he knew he could call his parents for help anytime. Dialing home, he expected this to be a minor inconvenience, a quick fix, before finally making it home to bed.
Hey, Jenna, how long is that drive from where the party to Marshall?
It's supposed to be about 30 minutes.
Okay.
Mhm. So when he dialed home, he nor his parents knew that this would be the beginning of a mystery that would ripple through their lives and everyone who loved Brandon Swanson. This is when Brandon called home. Brandon didn't call his parents right away. I'm not sure if, like we said, he headed somewhere else before making his drive home, but he called them closer to 2 a.m. And, maybe while his car is stuck, he is trying to call other friends to get him out. Maybe he didn't want to wake up his parents or make them have to come out and find him. but he's reported to have left the party right around midnight, and he doesn't call them till almost 2 a.m. His voice steady on May 14th. When his dad answered, he could hear the faint sound of the engine. He could hear Brandon's occasional sighs, which underscored the frustration, but the calmness in his tone. Even though he had accidentally driven into a ditch on his way back to Marshall, fortunately, he was unhurt. And to him, it just felt like a minor setback. His dad said that when he called, he said, "Hey, Dad, can you come pick me up? I drove into a ditch." And it was the same self-deprecating humor that he was known for. His parents were reassured that he wasn't injured. They grabbed their clothes quickly. They wanted to hurry and find him so he wasn't left there. Fortunately, it's May, so it's not as cold as it would have been on another night. When they were talking, they were trying to figure out where exactly he was. Brian's asking him, "You said you're near Lind. Which road are you on?" Brandon had responded, "I turned off Highway 68, I think. There's a gravel road. I thought it would take me straight through Lind, but I must have missed a turn or something." Annette had asked him to put on his hazard lights so that they could spot him. As they neared the area, they both described the confusion that set in. They're scanning all of these dark, empty roads, looking for the hazard lights, for the high beams, hoping that they can find him. They slowed the car down. They peered into all the surrounding fields. They kept telling him, "We're here. We're where you said that you were. We're not seeing you anywhere." And in reporting on this, there aren't street lights. There is no light, essentially. It's basically the middle of nowhere, right?
So they should have been able to see his lights. And
If
the
they were
hazard
close.
lights. Yeah.
Right.
Is there any reason why he didn't stay with his car? Like why he started to walk down the road in the dark?
So when they called him and they're like, "We're here, we don't see you," and they're going back and forth, and he's saying, "No, I'm exactly where I said I was."
Mm-hmm.
He's trying to walk back out to the main road
Oh, okay.
to see if he can spot their headlights since they're not seeing his headlights,
Okay.
thinking like he could head in the direction that they should be coming from.
That makes sense.
Yeah. He kept telling them, like, "You've got to be close. I can see the lights. We have to be in the same place." Annette and Brian recalled that something just wasn't adding up. The landscape around them didn't match the landscape that Brandon kept describing. They kept asking, "Are you sure? Are you sure it's Lind?" And this is in 2008, so he might not have had cell coverage to be able to check maps, or I'm not sure. I mean, that's
know if that
about when I got my first iPhone, but
I was trying to think because I remember we did a road trip around that time and that we MapQuest the whole thing.
right.
So we didn't have like
Right.
maps on our phones.
And especially if you didn't have an iPhone yet, it was a flip phone, I think.
Yeah.
That's not going to tell you where you are.
Right.
They kept asking. He kept saying, "I know what Lynn looks like. I know my way around." Brian said at one point, he said, "Brandon, stop walking. Stay where you are so we can find you." Brian had insisted, "I'll meet you at the lights."
He was walking towards the city then.
Yep. Despite their best efforts to guide him, the situation grew more confusing. Brandon's describing gravel roads, fences, farm buildings. None of it matched what Annette and Brian kept seeing. They circled back repeatedly, growing more anxious as the minutes ticked by. The call stretched on for nearly 47 minutes, with Brandon's parents trying desperately to locate him, while he's describing his surroundings in increasing detail. Tension was mounting on both ends of the line. Brandon's usually calm demeanor gave way to frustration, and his parents' worry began to spill into their voices. Then, suddenly, the call changed. "Wait," Brandon said, his tone shifting. "There's something." There was a pause, followed by an abrupt exclamation. "Oh, shit." The line went dead. This is when his mom shouted, "Brandon, Brandon," into the phone, panic overtaking her. Brian pulled the car over, fumbling to redial their son's number. The phone rang and rang, but Brandon didn't answer. For the next several hours, Annette and Brian drove the roads around Lind, shouting Brian's name into the still night. Their headlights scanned ditches, fields, fences, but there was no sign of him.
Oh, that's so awful.
Mm-hmm.
To hear that when you're searching for someone and you can't find them, you should have been able to find them.
Mm-hmm.
And then to have that,
After it's like 3/4 of an hour looking too.
When
Right.
the town was on, like where he was coming from should have only been 30 minutes away.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, as a parent, that just, I can't imagine, like your heart would drop.
Yes. And your anxiety and your panic, while it's already growing because you can't find him, skyrockets.
Absolutely.
They continued trying to call his phone repeatedly, and eventually each attempt went straight to voicemail.
Was it ringing before?
It rang the first couple times, but he didn't answer.
And then it stopped ringing. It
Mhm.
started just going to voicemail.
Yep.
Oh.
I assume it died, I'm guessing. I mean, he'd been out.
Or if someone turned it off.
And they were on the
Yeah.
phone for 47 minutes and he was outside of his car that whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, that's true.
By dawn, the realization began to sink in. Something had gone terribly wrong. The morning of May 14th, Brian and Annette had spent hours scouring all of the rural roads near Lind, calling out for him. When it became clear they couldn't find Brandon on their own, they contacted law enforcement. The official search for Brandon Swanson began later that morning, setting into motion one of the most perplexing missing person cases in Minnesota history. The first breakthrough in the investigation came when authorities located Brandon's car. It wasn't near Lind, as Brandon had believed. Instead, the green Chevy Lumina was found over 20 miles away in a remote area near Porter, Minnesota, at the edge of Lincoln County. The car was stuck in a shallow ditch, its wheels embedded in the soft earth, but no apparent damage. The keys were missing and the doors were locked.
Oh, wow.
I'm assuming that he
Got
shut
out
the
of
door,
car.
locked it, took the keys with him as he started walking.
Yeah, but not anywhere close to where he thought he was.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Over 20 miles away.
Yeah.
This discovery of his car deepened his mystery. How had Brandon become so disoriented, believing he was near Lind when he was actually miles away in a completely different direction? And more importantly, where was Brandon? Well, looking into, where he was versus where he thought he was, I pulled it up on the maps to look, and you've got kind of northwest, you have Canby, and if you're headed southeast, it passes through Porter, Taunton, all the way to Marshall. Where he thought he was would be southwest of Marshall, inland, which I'm not even sure how you get from one to the other, and I'm really not sure how you mistake being inland for being up in Taunton, where his car was actually found. It's almost like a triangle where, Marshall's like the point, and if you go straight up on like a slope or that part, that's how you get to Canby. So I'm not entirely sure if he maybe went somewhere else and then was driving home, but there's no reporting. No one's come forward to say that he did go somewhere else before heading home. But pull up that map and look it up, and you'll see how far apart those two places are, and not even the same direction heading to Marshall. Search teams began combing the area around the car, focusing on the gravel roads and fields Brandon might have walked through after leaving his vehicle. Cadaver dogs were brought in and picked up a scent trail leading away from the car. The trail suggested that Brandon had walked southward toward the Yellow Medicine River, a shallow but fast-moving waterway.
Is that towards a city?
No.
What? Okay.
No. Yeah. The scent trail ended abruptly at the edge of the water. This led investigators to speculate that Brandon may have attempted to cross the water. It was a dark and chilly night, and the uneven terrain combined with the river's slippery banks posed significant dangers. Despite extensive searches along the riverbanks and in the water itself, no trace of Brandon was found. The river theory seemed plausible, but it wasn't definitive. The Yellow Medicine River was shallow in most places, and its current wasn't strong enough to carry a body far. Divers searched the water, and helicopters equipped with infrared technology scanned the area, but their efforts yielded no results.
So what lights was he walking towards? What did he see?
I can't tell if it was maybe like a neighborhood further back.
I don't know how you could confuse that with a city, though.
Yeah.
I know.
Were there any
I mean, maybe he was.
this party?
I don't know.
Okay. Is it to be like that, disoriented and confused?
Mm-hmm.
Especially things, basically.
Especially in an area that you know so well.
Yeah, to go the complete wrong direction.
Right. And be so certain that you are where you said you were.
Yeah, and to be walking.
Oh, did you say he'd been drinking at the party?
Yeah, but all of his friends said that when he left, he didn't appear that he'd been
Well,
drinking.
maybe it hit him as he started drinking. I mean, maybe he just got on the freeway going, the opposite direction.
As he started driving, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He,
Yeah.
like I said, he had been drinking, and that's why he took the back roads, because he didn't want to be on the main roads just in case. Yeah.
Right. So with no GPS, I mean, maybe he wasn't as familiar with that area as he thought.
Right. And in that maybe it's really dark that night and
He just said bye to
you
all
take
his
one
friends.
wrong turn without realizing it and everything looks the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Left instead of a right once or something.
Mm-hmm.
Or you miss a fork
Yeah.
or something.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Something so small.
Yeah. One turn off.
Right. From the outset, authorities leaned towards the theory that Brandon's disappearance was a result of an accident rather than foul play. There were no signs of struggle near his car, and Brandon's conversation with his parents gave no indication that he was in immediate danger from another person. However, his abrupt exclamation at the end before the call cut off left ample room for speculation. What had startled him in those final moments? Theories about what might have happened ranged from, like we said, Brandon falling in the river, becoming disoriented, succumbing to hypothermia in the cold night air. Some speculated that maybe he fell into an uncovered well or some other hazard hidden in the darkness. Over the following days and weeks, search efforts intensified. Hundreds of volunteers joined the effort, walking shoulder to shoulder across fields and other dense brush. Local law enforcement coordinated with search and rescue teams, employing specialized equipment like drones, thermal imaging cameras, and ground penetrating radar. I really liked this. The sheriff continued to walk the 2 miles around the Yellow Medicine River every day for 30 days after they had initially searched the area. The Swanson family was ever present during the searches, driven by the determination to find answers. Annette and Brian worked tirelessly, coordinating with authorities and speaking with the media to keep Brandon's story in the public eye. Despite their efforts, no new evidence emerged. It was as if Brandon had simply vanished into the rural Minnesota night.
Did they ever find like his phone or anything or his keys?
No. And one of the challenges of this case is that there are a lot of private farms in the area, and there was not probable cause to search each of those. And most of the farmers in the area refused to let investigators go through their fields.
What?
I mean, I'm sure they were worried about law enforcement trampling or ruining their crops. And it's like the beginning of this season when everything's just starting. And if that's ruined, that's their income for the year.
Were they able to do like the drones over those areas or no?
They did, and they didn't find anything.
Because you're not going to be able to look for a phone or keys or anything.
Right, not with thermal imaging. And it sounds like it was still kind of cold. Like I know growing up, it could still potentially snow the first week of May. And we were nowhere near as cold as Minnesota.
Yeah.
And so it makes sense that maybe it was, really cold and that would set in quicker, I guess.
Yeah. I don't know.
Especially if he went through a river, though. That would have dropped his body temperature quicker, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, his, oh shit at the end could have been stepping into that river.
Yeah.
And maybe slipping or something.
Yeah.
Maybe he was still able to get out, but.
Yeah, maybe he got out and wandered somewhere else further downstream.
Right. There's speculation about, him falling into like a hole or a ditch or something on one of those farms close by, and the farm equipment that goes over it maybe hurting him or killing him and getting rid of the remains, whether the farmer who owned it knew or not. They might not have even noticed.
Yeah.
Which is awful.
Yeah.
I guess, and now that it's 2025, it's been that long, a lot of the owners have changed hands, which has encouraged law enforcement to reach out again and see if the new owner would let them search it, especially like in the winter. And then also the river's changing. It had a record level of drought. The river in recent years has had record low levels, which law enforcement has taken advantage of and searched again, now that they can see places they couldn't see before. Those are some of the challenges and then progress in this case.
Yeah.
As the investigation dragged on without resolution, Annette and Brian Swanson channeled their grief into advocacy, frustrated by the initial delays in the search for Brandon, caused in part by law enforcement's belief that adults have the right to go missing. They successfully lobbied for changes to Minnesota law. In 2009, Brandon's law was passed requiring law enforcement to treat reports of missing adults with the same urgency as missing children. It also mandated immediate coordination between agencies and the use of available resources in missing persons cases. Brandon's disappearance remains one of the most baffling cases, with no physical evidence beyond his abandoned car. Theories abound, but answers remain elusive. Why did Brandon believe he was near Lind when he was so far away? Did he attempt to cross the Yellow Medicine River, or was he startled by something or someone before the call ended? It could have been, an animal. Why has no trace of him been found despite continued extensive searches? We talked about the theory that he might have fallen in the river, which is one of the most widely accepted theories. Maybe he fell in while he was attempting to cross it. Maybe he accidentally fell in. Like we said, cadaver dogs had traced Brandon's scent to the edge of the river, so he definitely was over there.
And that could have been his exclamation too, like, oh, there's something, it's a river, and then he fell in. But it seems like I don't know, if I was holding a phone talking to someone and then I was trying to get out, I probably would let it go.
Right.
Trying to get my way out of a river to save myself.
Right.
It seemed like you would find that phone.
I would think they would have found it too if it had ended up in there. And, like we said, with this river, it wasn't like crazy deep or crazy fast moving. But if you're disoriented, maybe if you've been drinking, maybe if you're sleep deprived and stressed and it catches you completely off guard.
Yeah, if you think you're by another town, you wouldn't be expecting to walk into a river.
Yeah. Right.
If you think you're walking towards a town that you know.
Another possibility is that Brandon became disoriented while walking through the fields and maybe fell into something, and hypothermia could have set in with the cold night air.
Well, I guess maybe if he fell in, got knocked unconscious or something, that's why he wasn't answering his phone.
Right. But he said that before, so like if you fell.
Seems like your phone wouldn't turn off.
Right. Unless it died.
But they called a few more times and it rang.
Yep.
So it wasn't dead yet.
Unless he dropped.
Well, and that phone wouldn't be waterproof at that point. So if it had fallen in the river, then it would have been dead almost immediately, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, but if he fell into a ditch, it seems like it would have stayed on while he fell. It wouldn't have ended the call.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, unless it was a flip phone and he closed it. Would that hang it up?
I think
and
so.
And then if it cracked or got damaged, she couldn't answer.
Maybe.
And eventually would die.
Maybe, yeah. I guess depending on what kind of phone he had.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm interested in the timing between his final words and how quickly the phone died.
Yeah.
I feel like if you fell, you would say that after you fell. So you would have your phone with you.
Or
unless he hit his head.
Yeah.
Like if he fell and got knocked unconscious.
Yeah. But he still had time to say that for whatever happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you might say that on the way down.
Or that you would hear him scream.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know.
That's really interesting.
That's the next theory that's often talked about, that he might have fallen into an unmarked hazard, like an uncovered well, a cistern, a sinkhole. These things are all really common in that area. And, this is just kind of a wild rural field. Those things aren't obviously going to be marked, and he obviously didn't know where he was.
Yeah.
The local farmers and landowners, some of them were actively involved in the search, but many of them were not, and it could have been that he was in any one of those places.
How long was he walking for? Did they say?
I get the impression that it was about 30 minutes because he was in the car waiting for them and then getting frustrated and then starting to walk. And the call lasted 47 minutes.
Okay. How far was the river from his car?
Law enforcement said that the river was a roughly 3-mile trip from where his vehicle was. And that's a pretty fast. I mean, if it was only 30 minutes, that's really fast.
Yeah.
But canine units had his scent all the way from his car to that river. So that's what confuses me about falling into a well or falling into some kind of hazard is he managed to make it all the way over there. And I think that's why the river theory is
most prevalent.
Exactly.
Maybe when he was walking, maybe some animal did come up on him and he hung up and ran or something like that.
Absolutely.
And then he could have run into the river if he was, if something was chasing him.
Right.
Or someone was chasing him. Someone, if someone saw some guy wandering through their fields, especially in that area, if people don't want people in their fields.
Right.
Maybe a farmer, but maybe someone thought they were chasing someone trying to rob them out of their fields.
Yes, that's absolutely possible.
If he took off running and ran into the river, but maybe
and then fell. So a combination of some of these things.
Yeah, maybe he was chased. He could walk while talking on the phone.
And not sound out of breath.
And not sound out for 3 miles in 30 minutes.
Right.
But maybe,
I couldn't do it, but maybe somebody could.
Maybe.
I think that would be walking a 10-minute mile. Walking a 10, that's pretty fast.
And maybe, speed walking.
Fast. I don't know how
right.
other people, how fast people walk a mile.
Mm-hmm.
If he's tall and athletic and he's worried, and he's scared, maybe he was walking faster.
Maybe he got out of the car after 5 minutes of the phone conversation. Then he has 42 minutes to make it.
So he could have been
doable.
But it makes sense if someone came up on him and to hang up his phone and start running or something, than to fall.
Right. Sprain an ankle, trip, hit your head on a rock.
Because it seems like if something like that happened, they would have heard more than just that. And
they would have found something.
Yeah.
Because if he just fell, whoever came across him, I feel like they would call 911.
Yeah.
If someone fell and got hurt, right? Most people would do that.
If he hung up and put the phone in his pocket and then fell into the river, that makes a little more sense why they wouldn't have found it.
Right.
And if he just fell while he was holding it, it seems like you would have found the phone.
Well, he also could have stumbled upon something, dropped the phone, saying oh, and then the phone drops, it gets damaged, so he can't answer it. And then when he goes in the river, he loses it.
I don't know.
But I don't know. Or could have just fumbled the phone, dropped it, and couldn't find it and decided to keep walking towards the lights that he thought he saw.
Seems like they would have found his phone, though, especially if they were doing shoulder to shoulder walking the area.
Yeah.
Because they knew where he went.
Yeah.
And would the dogs have found it too? Because it would have had a scent on it. I don't know exactly how.
What if he was walking and dropped his phone and that's when he said, oh shit, and he dropped it in a well or in one of those cisterns or something?
Don't you think they would have heard more though? If you dropped your phone, it's not going to hang up.
It could have dropped and closed.
But would they have heard more though?
I don't know.
It seems like you would have heard it falling.
Yeah, probably. And maybe they did and didn't know what they were hearing in their panic and
maybe,
that endorphin rush, right?
Maybe. That's interesting.
They do say that there's local wildlife like coyotes in the area, possibly even bears. So
it could have been a bear.
Could have been, an animal that he encountered.
Yeah.
Because he says oh, there's something. And then the exclamation.
Exactly. don't know. I'm really hoping that they're able to search more of these farms and plots of land in the area.
Yeah.
The last theory, or what investigators have tossed around, is that it's possible he sustained an injury, like a head injury or a sprained ankle, that left him unable to call for help or to continue walking. I feel like if it was that, they would have found him.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the only way you wouldn't find him is if it was like the farm equipment.
Or if a bear got him.
Right? But even they would leave
Something.
Yeah. I think
Even the phone.
Yeah, unless they dragged him off somewhere further away that they didn't really search. But
you would see those marks though, right? Yeah. Unless something took him that direction, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know.
But I feel like you would see that stuff is pressed down and that it wasn't just walking.
Yeah, if it was like dragged.
Right. That's a totally different,
Yeah. What are your guys' thoughts?
Yeah, tell us what you think. I feel like it's just baffling. You would think there'd be some evidence somewhere.
And so many questions.
Yeah, this one's really confusing to me.
It is. It's even less evidence and less information than some of the other missing persons that we've covered.
Yeah, it's really interesting, the whole part of him driving and seeing the town when there isn't that anywhere around there.
Right. How is it that different of a location?
Did they ever go back out there at night to see what it looked like, where he might have been seeing?
I did go and look. One of the detectives that had gone out at night to look noticed that there was a red light on top of a Taunton grain elevator that could be seen. He's wondering if this was maybe possibly the lights that Brandon had seen and thought it's what made Lind within walking distance from where he was.
Okay.
Yeah. Because that would give a clue which direction he was walking. Although we know he was walking towards the river.
Yeah, I mean, we know that's where he was walking because that's where the dogs followed to.
One interesting thing is that Brandon was almost legally blind in one eye and had glasses, and his glasses were found in the car. So it makes sense that maybe he was seeing the lights and not entirely sure how far away they were or what exactly he was seeing. I also don't know why he left his glasses in the car when he really needed them to see. And maybe because it was so dark, he was thinking not useful, but I can't really figure out what that is. So all of those theories that we talked about are all plausible explanations, but none of them really account for the total lack of physical evidence and the enduring continued lack of physical evidence, 16 years later.
Yeah.
All of the area has been combed by hundreds of volunteers, dogs, aerial teams, and still no definitive clue has emerged. His family continues to hope for answers, clinging to the possibility that new technology or a fresh perspective might someday solve the mystery. Until then, the theories surrounding his fate remain just that, possibilities, each as haunting as the next. His parents leave their porch light on every night as a symbol of hope that Brandon would eventually return or be found. Brandon Swanson's case is a sobering reminder of the unpredictability of life and the challenges of searching for answers in vast, unyielding landscapes. While his disappearance remains unsolved, his story has left an incredible mark on how missing person cases are approached, ensuring that future investigations are handled with the urgency, technology, and collaboration they deserve. So, in summary, Brandon Swanson's disappearance on the night of May 14th, 2008 remains one of the most haunting mysteries in Minnesota's history. A 19-year-old college student with a bright future, Brandon had just finished his first year studying wind turbine technology. On his way home from a gathering with friends, he accidentally drove into a ditch near Porter, Minnesota, which is a rural area that he mistakenly believed was near Lind. Brandon called his parents for help, speaking to them for nearly an hour as they tried to locate them. He described seeing the lights. He reassured them he was walking towards them. Confusion set in as his parents driving the area he described couldn't find him. The call abruptly ended with Brandon's panicked exclamation, "Oh shit." he was never seen or heard from again. His legacy lives on in the changes his family has fought for, ensuring that missing persons cases are treated with the seriousness they deserve. Though the question of what happened to Brandon remains unanswered, his story continues to inspire efforts to find the truth and justice for him and countless others who have gone missing. In 2010, the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension took over as lead agency on this case. They set up a tip line, and by 2015, 90 leads had been reported through that tip line. So, because Brandon is still missing, if you know anything, if you've seen anything, please, please, please share what you know. As a reminder, Brandon Swanson was 19 when he went missing. He is white with brown hair and blue eyes. At the time of his disappearance, he was 5'6" and weighed 120 pounds. He was last seen wearing baggy blue jeans, a blue striped polo shirt, a black hooded zip front sweatshirt with an emblem on the back, and a white Minnesota Twins baseball hat, and a silver chain. Both of his ears are pierced. His clothing, cell phone, nothing has ever been recovered, not his keys. If you have any information about this case, please call the Lincoln County Sheriff's Department at 507-694-1664. Thank you so much for listening. We are so grateful for you.
This case is a good reminder for our Not Today Club to always share your location.
Yes.
With somebody.
Now we have that technology.
Have that now. And, maybe if his parents had had that, they could have found him
right
a lot easier.
That would be the first thing I would pull up.
Yep.
Where's her location? And I would go right there. I don't care where she told me she was.
Yep. Always share your location with somebody.
Yes. Not today rule.
Yep.
Okay. Well, share with us what you think about this case. Share with us any cases that you would like us to cover. And if you have any stories that you want to share, please send them to us at crimeclueless@gmail.com. We would love to hear them, maybe read them on an episode. To find out more about this case and all the resources that we used, you can visit our blog with the link from crimeclueless.com. If you would be so kind, follow us on our socials, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, at Crime Clueless. We love to interact. We are loving getting to know more of you and hearing your thoughts and favorite things on true crime. That's been really fun.
Yes.
And one last thing, if you could rate and review our show, that would be amazing. It helps us show up in searches and reach more people to share these cases that really need attention. Remember, refuse to be careless, clueless, or caught off guard.
Not today, murders.
Bye.